The Madison Porter case, which shook Kingston, Ontario, is a tragic story of violence, injustice and resilience, revealing serious flaws in both the justice system and the social structures of the city. Madison, an 18-year-old girl, was in her final year of high school at Kingston High School. She was a model student and captain of the cheerleading team, and was very close to her mother, Diane Porter, a woman who had overcome addiction and rebuilt herself as a waitress. Together, they formed a strong and loving family. The tragedy unfolded on the night of February 15, 2019, after the school hockey team won. Travis Collins, the son of an influential businessman, hosted a party at his house. Madison was seen arriving at the party with Travis and other classmates around midnight. Soon after, other players joined the group. According to investigators, Madison was drugged and then sexually assaulted by the young men, with Travis filming the scene. On February 18, 2019, the video of the assault quickly spread across social media, going viral. Madison became the target of mockery and humiliation at school, while the influence of the families of the aggressors, with strong political and judicial connections, helped to keep the case quiet. Without support, Madison found herself isolated, and the authorities and the school were indifferent. Despite all the signs of suffering in the following months, Madison began to show clear signs of trauma. She lost weight, could not sleep and felt constantly anxious. Her attendance at school decreased and her academic performance plummeted. Once an active and lively young woman, she began to isolate herself. Diane noticed the change, but Madison, afraid of reprisals, could not tell what had happened. It was only in April 2019 that she revealed the details of the abuse and the video to her mother, but, fearing lack of justice, she refused to report it. In addition, that same month, Diane was diagnosed with HIV, having contracted it years earlier due to a sexual assault she had suffered in her past. Unknowingly, she had transmitted the virus to Madison during her pregnancy. The new diagnosis was a devastating blow to both of them, further deepening Madison's psychological distress. Madison's situation worsened. She began to act impulsively, leaving anonymous messages on hockey players' lockers and writing threats on the locker room walls. Her anger and anguish were clear, a result of the impunity that surrounded her. On May 1, 2019, Madison found the courage to speak out at a school assembly on bullying and mental health, where she revealed her HIV diagnosis and shared her experience of being assaulted. However, the school took no action against the assailants. 4 days later, on May 5, 2019, Travis Collins sent a message apologizing to Madison and suggesting a meeting. When she arrived at the agreed-upon location, at the Kingston Memorial Center, she was brutally attacked again by the same assailants. The medical report indicated multiple blunt force trauma, with the cause of death being head trauma caused by a hockey stick. Authorities began to make progress. However, the 5 players involved in the crime gave inconsistent accounts of what happened, raising suspicions about their collaboration in the cover-up of Madison's death. Meanwhile, Madison's body was hidden in the arena's freezer, and the attackers meticulously cleaned the scene, discarding the hockey sticks and other evidence. The cover-up attempt was carefully planned but failed. The investigation, led by veteran detective Marcos Grayson, began to unravel the plot. Security footage from the arena and recovered DNA evidence helped build a solid case against the attackers. Text messages between the players, describing their actions and concerns after the attack, were key to exposing the premeditated nature of the crime. Additionally, Tyler Kent, one of the attackers, had an emotional breakdown and cooperated with the investigation, providing crucial details about what really happened that fateful night. The trial, which began in September 2019, attracted widespread attention not only because it was a brutal murder case, but also because it exposed the power of privilege and influence of the families involved. Prosecutor Margaret Davidson presented an overwhelming case, which included witness statements, security footage, forensic evidence, and the emotional testimony of Diane Porter, who described her daughter's devastating transformation. The 5 players were eventually brought to justice. Travis Collins was convicted of first-degree murder and given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Connor Riley, Jason Bell, and Mark Suter were convicted of second-degree murder and given life sentences without the possibility of parole after 20 years. Tyler Kent, who cooperated with the investigation and played a lesser role in the attack, was convicted of manslaughter and given a 15-year sentence, with the possibility of parole after serving a third of his sentence. The case sparked a national conversation about privilege, toxic masculinity, and systemic failures in educational and athletic institutions. The Kingston community, devastated by the tragedy, began to implement significant changes, with new policies on consent, sexual assault, and athlete accountability. Kingston High School discontinued its hockey program, and the Kingston Memorial Center underwent major renovations. Diane Porter founded the Madison Porter Foundation, dedicated to supporting survivors of sexual assault and raising awareness about HIV. The foundation worked to implement changes in sports and education policies, ensuring that Madison's legacy would not be forgotten and that other victims could find support and justice. In November 2020, 1 year after the trial, the city of Kingston unveiled a memorial garden in Madison's honor, featuring a plaque with her photograph and an excerpt from her final speech at the school, where she challenged silence and the culture of privilege. Diane Porter continued her advocacy work, traveling across Canada to raise awareness about sexual assault, abuse of power, and the importance of believing survivors. Madison Porter's story, though tragic, became a catalyst for meaningful change in Kingston, with initiatives emerging in her honor seeking to transform suffering into a movement for justice and awareness. Madison, though robbed of her future, became a voice for all those who suffered in silence, and her story inspired a generation to fight against structural inequalities and a culture of impunity. Her death highlighted the urgency of confronting issues of sexual abuse, the lack of support for victims, and the impunity guaranteed by socioeconomic privilege. The Madison Porter Foundation has become a pillar of psychological and legal support for survivors, providing resources for those who, like Madison, have faced neglect from the institutions that were supposed to protect them. In addition, the foundation has helped fund educational programs in schools and universities, focusing on consent, empathy, mental health, and safety. In Kingston, the pain of losing such a promising young woman has never been forgotten. The city has become a symbol of resistance, reflecting on the responsibility to protect the most vulnerable and to ensure that all those involved in acts of violence are held accountable, regardless of their social status. Although the perpetrators received their sentences, many still believe that punishment could not erase the irreparable loss and damage caused. The emotional, psychological, and social impact on the Kingston community was profound. However, Diane Porter's courage in facing her pain and turning tragedy into action showed that the fight for justice is never in vain. Madison's story also brought to light the need for changes in Canadian laws, especially regarding how cases of sexual assault and violence are handled. Women's rights and anti-sexual assault organizations, inspired by the courage of Madison and her mother, have pushed for reforms in the law and for stronger policies to prevent, protect, and support victims. Madison's memory, now immortalized through the memorial garden and institutional changes, continues to teach the importance of listening, believing, and acting in defense of those facing violence. The legacy of her struggle, her family, and her community resonates as a reminder that justice cannot be ignored, and that silence in the face of abuse comes at a high cost. Thus, Madison Porter's story, marked by pain and injustice, has also become a story of transformation, resistance, and hope for a future where victims have a voice and can finally find the justice they deserve.